All right, welcome to phase 4 where I'm going to follow that checklist which I showed you before, and we're going to be shooting this landscape shot right from scratch. As you can see, I've got this nice little spot where we have a lot of things in the foreground, and also we've got this nice sunset going behind that hill with some nice patterns in the clouds. There's a lot of contrast in this scene, as you're going to find out. So this is going to be a challenging shot, but we'll be looking at everything that we have talked about in this particular course. So let's not waste any time. Let's quickly get inside our camera and let's see how to take this shot. Right, so I am very close to the golden hours right now, just a few minutes from it. So right now is the time to take step 1, which is just planning the entire shot. So you can see here I've got a good composition. Now it might be tough for you to see this on this screen because we have a lot of contrast here, because the sun, I'm facing right in the west direction. The sun is just set in front of me right now, and the sky is absolutely, in this image right now, looks blown out. But this is why we will be doing the HDR. So in order to just see this composition, I'll probably put up the image right now so you can probably see it in a slightly better way. But basically we have got a nice little rock here, probably for which we might be needing focus stacking right in the front of the foreground. Then we've got a focal point, which is this hut that you saw in the video also before, where I am following rule of thirds. There's also like a mini rule of thirds I'm following for this little structure that we had here. And finally we have the background here. So composition wise, we are pretty much set. Focal point is also done. Now talking about my comfort, let me show you. I have just spread out this sheet that you can see, and I'm sitting absolutely comfortably in the meditation pose, and there's no strain on my back. There's no danger to my equipment here, provided it doesn't rain. The weather forecast that I saw was, it predicted rain today, but luckily we have good skies and it's not raining. But in any case, I've got a little shelter here, which I would have used anyway if it would have rained. Finally, I'm going to select bracketing, and I'll definitely be needing a lot of bracketing in this shot because the contrast is so much between the highlights and the shadows, which are the foreground. So you can see here, now I'm using the Nikon D750, so there's a bracketing button on the left, which I'm just going to press, and you can see the bracketing option comes. Now, if I move one of the command dials on my camera, it actually helps me select how many shots I want to shoot. So here I can actually go more than 3, and I'll probably be needing more than 3. So I'll actually go for something like 5 shots. Okay, so 5 shots should be enough. And the other dial, it helps me select the difference in the stops of these 5 shots, just like we had in the other camera. Remember that AE thing where we were selecting the number of stops? There we selected 2 stops. So here also I can do it. It's actually represented just on the number line. So you can see the pointer is 2 stops less, 2 stops more. That means we have 5 shots, and 2 of the underexposed shots will be -2, -4, so 2 stops less, and then 4 stops less. Then the overexposed 2 shots will be +2 and +4. Okay, so there's a huge variation that we have here, which will be perfect to capture this crazy dynamic range that we have going on in this camera. On this camera I can even go to 7 shots, 9 shots, and even have difference of 3 stops each between them. Okay, but I don't think that much is required. 5 shots with -2, -4, +2, +4 should be enough to cover this dynamic range. So I think I'm set as far as bracketing is concerned. Finally, I have to decide, like in this step that you can see here, I have to decide whether I have to use an ND filter or not. Now, to be frank, the clouds are not really moving too fast here, okay? But I will still try to probably take an ND filter shot. So I've got my step-up rings, which I've attached to my circular ND filter, and that will be ready to go onto my camera. So I'm ready with that. And finally, the last step is, do I need a polarizing filter here? Absolutely not, because first of all, there's no water body here. And secondly, I'm shooting right into the sunset, so I'm not perpendicular to the sun. And that means it's going to have the least possible effect on even the sky. Okay, so I don't think it's required here at all, because I mainly use it when I'm shooting water bodies. So as far as step 1 is concerned, we are done. All right, so it's time to move on to step 2, which is all about taking our test shot, which is going to be the metered shot or the base shot in which the meter is in the center. So right now you can see the meter is already in the center. I can actually go ahead and take this shot. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just reduce my aperture a bit, just make the f-stop number a bit smaller so that we don't face any diffraction issues, because shutter speed is usually not a problem here. So you can see I would like to probably shoot this shot at f 11 probably. If required, we can focus stack later on, and or maybe f11 is fine. Then I'll have to just cut down my shutter speed a bit just to save that light and get the meter in the center. So, or actually, it was the positive side is, you know, on top here. So I'll have to actually just cut down the light. So 1/40 is kind of given me something in the center. You probably still can't see it because of the crazy contrast that we have. So once I take the shot, I'll probably show you the zoomed in version. Now, where should I focus here? Now, remember I told you, usually 1/3 is a good idea, right? So something like this would have been probably 1/3. I can even open up the grid, but you don't really have to be that accurate about it. So I could have probably focused somewhere here, but remember I told you, you can override this rule if you have a strong focal point, okay? And I do have a very strong focal point in this shot, which is this hut. By the way, let me just quickly turn down the shutter speed so at least you can kind of see the foreground a bit better, okay? Just so that you get an idea what I'm doing here, okay? So I'm going to get back to the metered shot. I'm going to actually put this right on the focal point. If I have a strong focal point, I like to put my focus point right on top. This can probably cause some problems right in front of the foreground. We will check that later, and we'll probably do some focus stacking if required. So right now, I think this is good. I'm going to take my test shot, and I think this is not looking bad at all. I think this is looking pretty good. So right now we are done with the settings and we've taken a normal shot. Now we're going to go on to step 3, where we're going to zoom in and make sure everything is coming sharp. All right, so I'm just going to use this magnifying glass icon on my camera just to zoom in. Now I'm not really worried about the sky. The sky pretty much is blown out in our test shot. That's not a problem because, like I said, we will be using bracketing and the underexposed shots later on will help us with that. Mainly kind of concentrating on the foreground here, okay? And this, to my eye, I'm not sure if you can see here, it is kind of sharp. It's not too sharp, to be frank. That's because I used a slightly wider aperture. And overall, to be frank, I'm still not happy with the sharpness that I've got here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take one more shot. And right now what has happened is it actually just turned up the shutter speed on its own. That's because the bracketing is on. So right now, I'm just going to turn off bracketing just till I get this test shot right, okay? So maybe this should be fine. I might even, if this doesn't work out, I might even decide to raise the aperture a bit. I think, yeah, this time it is absolutely looking fantastic. So this part probably is a bit soft, and I was expecting that we will probably focus stack this if required, but mainly I'm interested in my focal point, which should be really sharp, which is this nice little hut. Because we are facing into the sunset, there is a bit of, we're kind of facing a bit of a contrast issue. That's not a problem. Once we put this in the HDR software later on with the underexposed shots, this should be good. I'm just going to quickly check the sharpness of the structure also. And I think this is okay. But I'm not too happy with it. So probably I will be focus stacking this shot for sure. But for right now, just as an average shot, just for our bracketing to start, I think this is absolutely fine. So what we're going to do now is we are going to bracket those 5 shots using these settings and using this as the base shot. So let's do that. All right, so I've just set up the bracketing again, and this time I'm all set to take the shots. This time I won't be pressing the shutter button to take the shot. I'll be using a remote. Okay, so this is the infrared remote, and basically that's just going to help me allow, that's just going to help me not move the camera at all. So there'll be no shake and we'll get the sharpest possible shot. Even though, to be frank, the shutter speed right now is fast enough to even press the button, but still, why take a chance? So I'm going to just quickly set up my remote control. You can do this, find out how it's done on your camera. These days, you even get apps on your mobile which control this. So it's not a big problem, but mine is set right now. My base setting is slightly just changed here. So this is my base setting right now. I'm going to take the first shot on this. So that's the first shot. We're going to take the second shot. That is going to be underexposed. You can see the shutter speed was changed and we're getting a nice sky now, right? You can, for the first time, you can see the details in the sky. We're going to take the next shot. This is again mainly for the sky. So these two were underexposed by -4 and around -2 stops. Okay, then now we're going to go for the overexposed shots, which are going to be for the foreground. And there I definitely need to use a remote because the shutter speed now becomes slower for these shots. Okay, and for you it might be too overexposed right now, but don't worry once we that's because it also depends on the camera settings that I'm using, which is recording the video. But basically, even if we get one of those plus shots, the overexposed shots for the foreground correct, the editing software is gonna handle this. But the best part is we've got a great looking sky, and that's, to be frank, that is the main reason why we bracket photos. Because always remember one thing, and I may not have pointed out this during the course, it's always easier to recover details from shadows. So for example, if the shot was dark, we can raise the shadows easily in the editing software, especially if you're shooting in RAW. Like you can see I'm shooting in RAW here. On the right, you can see RAW plus JPEG. But if you have blown out highlights, like we had in our test shot, not even Lightroom will be able to recover that properly. So it's easier to increase the shadows, but very tough to recover details from blown out skies. That's why bracketing is 100% essential, mainly not for the foreground that much, but more for the details in the sky, especially if you're dealing with a crazy contrast like we are dealing with right now. I probably, even for the sky, would have taken sometimes 7 shots, but like you saw, the most underexposed shot that we got, the first one, that was enough. Let's quickly just have a look at that. So I think even this is enough, but even this. So you can see we've got all the details in the sky, and that is very, very important. Beautiful colors, nice pattern to the clouds. We can see them all. And finally, we've got our foreground with this shot also. All right, so we're done with the bracketing. Let's move on to the next step. All right, now we are on to the next step, which is about the ND filter. Now, like I told you, we don't really have too much movement of the clouds here. So the ND filter shot right now is not of prime importance. So what I'm going to do is I probably will be taking the ND filter shot, but right now it's very important before I lose this light, because I'm just 15 minutes away from proper sunset. So just so that I don't lose the light, focus stacking right now I feel is, for me, is more important. So at least on the foreground. So what I'm going to quickly do is that I'm actually going to take the shot in which this rock in front is absolutely sharp. So you can see I've moved my focus point right on the rock. And again, I'm going to be taking those 5 bracketed shots. Now this time I've lost a bit of light, okay? And therefore I just might have to change the settings for my base shot just to get the meter in the center. So I'll have to just make my shutter speed a bit slower. So at 25th of a second, now we are at this. Make sure my focus point is on the rock once again. Then I've got my remote. Again, I'm going to take still those 5 shots, okay? Even though we're just focusing on the foreground. Like I said, later on, if we have to focus stack, we will even be turning this image into an HDR so that focus stacking becomes, equal. The blending is easier for the software. So I'm going to quickly take 5 shots. It's just that we're changing the focus point. That's all. And I think I could have probably got away with 3 shots. That's what I'm getting the feeling. Maybe I overestimated the contrast here, because this shot is pretty overexposed anyway. One more thing I quickly want to do is, since I'm on to focus stacking, remember I was not too happy about this little thing that was here, the sharpness for this. So I'm also just going to focus on this and just take those 5 shots again. Now, some people, even at this point, they like to take for the sky, but I've already, I don't think I recorded it, but I actually zoomed in the underexposed shot that we took earlier on, and the sky was pretty sharp. So, I don't think there's any need to do that, but let's say if you did want to do that, you can take one for the sky also. This will mean that we have a shot which is absolutely sharp from front to back if we do want to go that crazy on focus stacking. So here also, maybe I can just change my base shot a bit, focus again on somewhere on the clouds where there's enough contrast to focus, and just take the 5 shots. Because so this is the advantage of having bracketing on. I just have to press the button, it just quickly takes the shot. So even if you will not be using the shots later on, it's still okay because you didn't put that much effort. But if you were changing your shutter speed manually every time just to for this, it can just be a bit tiresome. That's where bracketing really helps you. So we are done with this also. Now let's tackle quickly the ND filter shot. All right, so right now you can see I'm very close to the sunset. So this is like a luxury shot. If it results in a good shot, nothing like it. So we will just try the ND filter anyway. So right now my base settings, you can see, because I'm losing more light very quickly. You know, at sunset, you lose light very quickly. So you have to be quick about things. You can see it's 1:30, f11, ISO 100 are my base settings. Now, remember what I told you before, putting on the ND filter, not just note these settings, but also change your, you know, once I've made sure that, yes, my focus is set here, I can hear that beep. Okay, I'm switching the autofocus to manual focus. Okay, now right now what I'm going to do is, also just one thing I wanted to point out, I'm just going to slightly underexpose this shot, because for this particular shot the sky is of prime importance. So I'm going to treat this as the base shot. Okay, so maybe something like 1:50, because like I told you, it's easier to recover details. And also one more point is, right now in the foreground, we have some things which are moving, like those cloths and you know, some of the trees. So anyway, if I do get this shot for the ND filter, it turns out to be a good shot, I probably will be using the foreground from another image, because here there'll be too much movement because the shutter speed is going to be very slow. This is called as creating a composite, and if it's required, I'll probably show you how to do it. I'll show you anyway once we are inside Photoshop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to treat something like this as the base setting, maybe 1:50, slightly underexposed. And we're mainly kind of concentrating on the sky. I've already changed the manual to manual focus. So all I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take out my exposure calculator app, and I'm going to dial in these settings, you know, and see what shutter speed am I getting. And I'm going to first of all see, is this enough to get a blur on the little movement of the clouds that we have. Now I can see there is some movement. So maybe, you know, we can have a go at it. So let's see. All right, so I've put the 10-stop ND filter on my lens, and now you can see I'm using the exposure calculator app. Remember, these were our base settings. I actually changed it to 1:40 from 1:50 because we again lost a bit of light, so I just had to quickly compensate for it. So our base settings are this one, current exposure, and you can see new exposure. If I take the ND stop 10-stop filter, it's 26 seconds. Now here's the thing, the clouds are moving, but they're moving pretty slow. So 26 seconds definitely won't be enough to blur them. So here what we can do is, okay, and in fact, what I want you to do is pause this video and see how we can solve this problem, because I'm just going to tell you in some seconds from now. Okay, so what basically the solution to this is to even cut down more light, but we don't have more ND filters, right? So what we can do is, instead of using f11, we can actually use a higher f-stop number, because that will narrow down the aperture, cut down the light, and that will have a drastic effect on the shutter speed that we will be requiring, because we want to make it as slow as possible so that we can capture the movement of the cloud. So what I can do here is, I can just, instead of, let's say instead of f11, if let's say I was to use okay, I don't even mind getting a bit of diffraction just to get more shutter speed. In these cases, it's okay. So at f22, we're getting 102 seconds, close to 2 minutes. That should be enough to blur these clouds if there's any movements. What I'm going to do is, here in my camera, I'm going to turn this to f22. Okay, then we need to use 102 seconds, right? So that is not directly available from the camera. I'm going to go over to my time mode. I have the remote with me, and the moment I press this, I'm going to start the clock by pressing this button, and hopefully that should give us a good exposure. So I'm going to do that now. Just quickly set up. Okay. So now I'm going to start the timer. My shot has started. I'll wait for 102 seconds, and let's see how this shot looks. All right, so after that shot got completed, this is what I got. And to be frank, I was not very happy with this particular image. That's because mainly the issue here was, first of all, we had very less clouds. This was this main cloud in the center, which was moving. And the problem is, since most of these clouds are moving left to right, it just doesn't feel that dramatic. These shots look really good, like you've seen before in the tractor shot. When they're moving towards you, or slightly even at 45 degrees, that's fine. But here is literally very flat, so it's not that appealing. Plus the clouds were less. This big cloud on the left here was very stationary, so even almost a 2-minute exposure just kind of blurred it a bit. We had some nice patterns here which basically just got absolutely smooth, which in this case doesn't look that great. The foreground, yeah, it was kind of dark, but I could have edited this. That's not a big problem. There were some blur issues going on here, obviously. That's fine, but overall I was not happy with this shot. So what we're going to do is, for the editing part, which is starting from the next video, we are going to treat the normal shot that we took, the bracketed shot that we took. We are going to work with that, the focus stacked shot, because that will involve a lot of editing. I will be showing you, just like I showed you how to take a shot from scratch, I'll now also be showing you how to edit a shot from scratch, and for that also I will be providing you a checklist. So that's going to start from the next video. It's going to be a lot of fun, so let's go there.